Hi guys, welcome to episode 3 of the Healing Haley Show. If you're here, thank you for coming and thanks for showing up for yourself. All it takes is just showing up one episode at a time. So, quick disclaimer at the beginning, I am not a licensed professional. I'm just a girl who's sharing her story in hopes that it can help a few people. If you are looking for that licensed or professional help, then definitely go seek it elsewhere. If you want to stay and keep listening, today we're talking about emotional maturity part 2. So, the previous episode was part 1. Definitely check that one out before you watch this. We kind of spoke about recognizing that emotional maturity is even a thing and it transcends through generations and ultimately to you and out, into your world. So the part 2 today is focusing on our emotional maturity and how we can break that cycle and not allow our emotional immaturity to keep causing ourselves pain, causing other people pain, and no longer perpetuating that cycle. So my name's Haley Foreman. I'm going to be your host. Let's jump straight into it today. We're going to talk about a few signs that can indicate emotional immaturity. So the first one is you have a real issue with commitment. You find it hard to plan for the future. You're kind of fearful of planning for the future. When it comes to commitment in relationships, you may find it hard committing to one person, or you may find it hard, like building a life with someone. So, marriage may scare you or make you uncomfortable, or you kind of expect failure in marriages if you haven't had, like very good role models when you were growing up. Another sign is you find it really difficult to go deep in relationships. So your friendships and partnerships tend to be very surface level. You're not really talking about how you feel, why you feel that way, where that feeling comes from, and all the things you think about the world. Like, you're not sharing those things with people. That's usually because you fear that vulnerability, because you fear rejection. That if you do open up and tell somebody what you think and feel, that, they're going to reject you. Usually that's where it comes from. Another sign is you often make things about yourself. So if some kind of situation occurs, even if you're not directly related to the situation, you've somehow made it about you. Or an example is if you're in a partnership and, you guys are having a conversation and that person is trying to tell you what happened to have you gain perspective on what happened. Sorry, I can't talk today. I don't know what's wrong. Then usually if a person is emotionally immature, they'll make that conversation about them not being good enough, when really you're just trying to explain your perspective. So that's a pretty big indicator that you have issues around emotional maturity. Another one is you have a really hard time owning your mistakes. So saying sorry or apologizing is very hard for you. Or even if you can say sorry or apologize, you have a really hard time with accountability and responsibility and truly understanding what that means. So, for example, a person who's emotionally immature would say, "Oh, I'm sorry I did this." And they would maybe even give you some kind of surface level reason, like, I'm sorry I did that, I was scared. But they won't really go deep into why they did it and why they're not going to do it again. Or if, like, they just don't understand what taking accountability means. And they don't realize that if they do something, it's going to affect what someone else does, and navigating that responsibility within that. And I kind of spoke about that in the awareness video and how that can unfold in relationships. So another sign that we can recognize for emotional immaturity is if you often get defensive. So for me, that was the biggest thing that I had to navigate in terms of emotional maturity. And we spoke about that the last episode, and how I had to learn to hold space and recognize that I was getting defensive. Even if it wasn't in a very obvious way. On the surface, it may have seemed like an obvious way because you're getting very aggressive or angry or whatnot. But I wasn't just all around defensive about things or sensitive about things, not necessarily. But once it was something attacking my character, that made me really defensive. So that's something that I had to look at. And you can think that you're protecting yourself by responding in this way. Your ego has a way of making you feel like it's protecting you. Because, maybe sometimes it has, but for the most part, it's not. And really, you're just blocking yourself to love and existing in a state of fear. So we spoke about owning your mistakes, having issues with commitment, having issues going deep in relationships, making things about you, and getting defensive. So be honest with yourself, be authentic, write down the things that you struggle with, or, talk about them, or whatever you choose to do, but get real. It can be hard to want to admit that you may be doing these things, but that's what it takes to keep moving forward. And I want to take some time right now to just let you know, first and foremost, that you are not broken. You are not your mistakes. You weren't given the proper tools to know how to navigate life and relationships. So you can't continue blaming yourself, All you can do right now is just say, okay, I know this now, and I'm going to accept that and do better. And I'm going to forgive myself and have compassion for myself, because I had no control and no say in what I was taught as a child. And now I'm learning, and now I'm growing. And I want to take another second here to say this journey isn't easy. I don't want to be misleading in any way, that, once you keep going along this journey, everything's going to be okay, or nothing's ever going to affect you again. The level to which things affect you will be far less and much more manageable, but you're still a human being. You still have feelings. And that's what's beautiful about life. You still react to things. You still have emotions. But you do have to recognize that you are the only person on this earth who can save yourself. No one else can come save you. You can't save another person. And that can be a little scary at first, but there's actually so much power in that, in taking back your life and deciding what you feel is right and living your life from that place, and not allowing anyone else to decide how you live anymore. As long as you're living your life from a place of love, unconditional love, you're doing it right. And that's all you need to keep doing. So if you want to wake up today and leave yesterday and the past behind you and be a completely different person today, that is okay. It's 100% okay to decide you're done with that stuff. And if anyone wants to hold you back and keep dragging you back to that past self, or, saying you've changed now or whatnot, let them. It's okay. It will be okay. You're here for you. You're not here for anybody else. So I just want to take a really quick minute to say that, because this can be difficult. Like, for me, it was difficult. And I want you to know that you're supported, even if I don't know you, like, or talk to you all the time. Like, you have my unconditional love and support through this journey, because we're all one. We're all connected. We're all going through the same things. We're all trying to get to the same place. And that's peace and happiness and freedom from, all these conditions in our world. So we spoke about these signs. Get real with yourself. Get honest with yourself. Think on it for a while. When I talk, I tend to kind of just not really get into, if this is how you feel, or if this was your sign, this is how you might feel, or I don't really like to get deep into that, because I think that this journey is your own, and I tend to focus on myself, because I just want you to look at a situation and see how things tie together. But like I said, like, you have to throw your own life experiences into it. And, to some degree, I might say, this might look this way or this might not, but everyone's experience is at the core the same, but on the surface different. So you're gonna have different experiences. Your experience won't be mine, and mine won't be someone else's, and whatnot. So definitely just feel safe in that. Like, you don't need all the answers from someone else. Like, all the answers are already in here. So sit with yourself, think about it, think about why you might feel that way. And the first thought may not be exactly why you feel that way, but don't be scared of, like, just throwing things out there, because eventually they'll lead you to what is ultimately causing these things within you. And this path is forward. Like, if you keep taking steps towards growth, you will keep moving forward, even if you have bad days, even if you have, times where you've fallen back into an old pattern. Like, that is the journey. No one just keeps going forward and is okay. Like, if you think about your life, you've had, like, so many years of being conditioned to think one thing. You're not just gonna all of a sudden, like, start making all good decisions now. So you have to be gentle with yourself and kind to yourself. And I really wanted to stress that. But let's talk about your relationship to yourself and your subconscious mind for a second, and start becoming aware of our emotions. So imagine a scenario where you're at work and you've been there for about a year, and your manager says, "Hey, can you complete this task for me?" And you say, "Sure." Halfway through it, you recognize that you don't know what to do. No, a normal emotional response here would be, you go ask for help, or, maybe you try figure it out a little bit and see if you can do it, or research a little bit, or talk to a colleague, or whatever it is. But you just find a way to say, "Hey, for some reason I don't remember this right now. Can you give me a little help?" if your response is all of a sudden this downward shame spiral of, why do I even work here? I'm clearly not good enough. My boss is going to fire me. I should just quit. I'm obviously an unintelligent person. If you've gone here, this is not just you. You're not just an anxious person who thinks that way. You're not just doing that because it's a part of your personality. You're doing that because at a deep subconscious level, your thought patterns have been disrupted, and now you have this stream of negative thoughts, and they're causing you to feel different things, emote differently, act differently. Even if consciously you can tell yourself, oh, those thoughts aren't necessarily like all right, or, I shouldn't be getting this way. I shouldn't be so worked up. Your conscious mind cannot outwill your subconscious mind. That's why I take so much time to explain things to you and tell you to be gentle with yourself and tell you to get to the root of things. You have to get to the root of why you are responding this way subconsciously, so that you can start shifting your subconscious thoughts. And that takes time, But to shift those thoughts, you have to become aware of those thoughts and emotions. For me, in moments where I'm getting worked up, I've learned to recognize the signals physically. My chest will get very hot, and my arms get very hot, all of this area here. Or I'll start to raise my voice and yell. And you really have to start watching out for things like this. Figuring, do you get hot in your face? Do you get hot in your hands? What happens? Do you run away? Do you start doing other things to distract yourself? What are these things that you're doing when you feel like you're in a space of not being okay, or having a very intense emotional response? When it's not necessarily relative to what's happening. Why is that happening to you? And start recognizing in those moments that it's happening to you, so you can start becoming aware of the fact that you're getting into this state. So we spoke about this work situation and how your thoughts can just unravel. And I want to talk about my mom for a second here, because when I was a kid, my mom responded to things in this way. It wasn't always a very surface level, dramatic response. She did have moments where she got just unnecessarily angry, but oftentimes it was this other response that to me felt like just this feeling of doom, nothing was gonna be okay now because one thing had gone wrong in the day, or this darkness had descended, or this dark cloud was just hovering. That's the feeling in those moments. And I can remember being 10 or 11 at this point and just thinking, your response is not right. This is not normal for someone to be responding in this way. And you can look back at yourself as a kid and think you were obviously more emotionally mature than your parent at this point in time. And think about what that would do to you. If I kind of step out of myself for a second and look at my younger self, I can start to think now, because it's a human instinct to need that bond between yourself and your primary caregiver. If I was constantly in this fearful state that she was not going to be okay, and I had to do whatever I could to shift my emotions to make her okay, I can see how that would lead me into a life of being attracted to people I think need help or need saving in some way. It can lead you to a life of never saving yourself first. Allowing yourself to implode because you're trying to save somebody else. And the reality is that you cannot save somebody else. We spoke about this at the beginning. I'm the only person that can save myself, and everyone else is the only person that can save themselves. And that's just the truth. So why I'm being vulnerable about these things is because I want people to start looking at them and recognizing not just that something happened in their childhood, but taking a second to be this happened, how did that transcend through my life? Looking at your childhood, looking back at your relationships and your friendships, and kind of finding that missing puzzle piece to figure out why you're even doing this. And then you get to a place of understanding, and that also really helps with compassion and forgiveness towards yourself. And then ultimately, once you get to that deeper understanding, you recognize that you see the trauma in every other person now. And all of a sudden you're in this world where you thought, if someone does this, I'll never talk to them again. If someone does that, they're a horrible person. Now you're existing in this world where you're oh, you're just hurt. It has nothing to do with anybody else. It's just you, And I want to talk about another scenario in my childhood with my mom, when I noticed a distinct difference in her personality and the way she dealt with things. And she got into a situation where she lost a lot of money through a bad investment. And I can remember this kind of change in her personality. And I want to talk about for a second how emotionally immature people tend to base their lives around things that will constantly set them up for failure. So my mom had this money that was her safety net and security. And she really based a lot of her security around that money. But when you base things, when you have things in your life that are not based or rooted in unconditional love, and that's it. If they're rooted in something physical, whether it be money or a house or a person even, you're setting yourself up for failure every time, because life is a series of constantly shifting cycles. things are ever changing and ever flowing. So if at the core of your belief system is not something that is able to shift and flow and just allow, then you're setting yourself up for failure. You know, you've allowed the world or people to make you think that this money is going to make you happy, this house is going to make you secure. Emotionally immature people have a really hard time grasping what I'm about to talk about. So, with my mom, when that happened, it was over for her. She could never save enough money to recover. Nothing was going to be okay. It was doom, like I said. And emotionally immature people are living from a state of lack. A constant fear. Because they haven't based their core belief on something that's adaptable to change. Which is, what I just spoke about. And for her, in this situation, she lost that money. But let's think about for a second that she could have lost that money in many ways. Anything could have happened. She made a bad investment, okay. She could have lost that money because she got in a car accident and someone sued her. She could have lost that money because I got really ill as a kid and needed, expensive treatment. There could have been a mile-long list of things that could have caused that. Yes, everything comes with, a different emotional response maybe, or a different level of devastation or sadness in a way. And they all come with different lessons. But ultimately, they're all the same result, that you don't have this money anymore. Emotionally immature people, cannot understand what I'm saying here. They cannot look at the bigger picture. They forget gratitude in that moment. They forget that life is abundant. And that is also a very kind of spiritual aspect as well that you have to start recognizing. And it's all tied in. So, when I'm explaining it to you, it can seem kind of muddled, but that's because it is. Because everything is one. So, in this situation, my mom didn't stop to think, I lost this money. I'm upset at myself that this happened, but, I have my family and they're all alive and they're all okay. And I live in this house. We can still pay our bills. We're still fine. We still have a stream of income, a good stream of income. There were things to be very grateful for still. Also, understanding that life redirects you sometimes. Maybe you lost $1 million for argument's sake, and that redirection propelled you into creating a business that's going to make you $5 million in 3 years. There's all sorts of possibilities in the world, and having a very negative, pessimistic outlook, ungrateful outlook, a lack mentality can really indicate severe emotional immaturity. And this is where you have to start getting to a place of realizing that I have to root my life around unconditional love. Literally anything else that's rooted in any form of judgment, even setting yourself up for failure. So, we've spoken about these things. I kind of let you in on how it's affected me in my life. Let's end this off by talking about how we can make steps to becoming more emotionally mature. Number one, get help if you can. Try to find a psychologist, therapist, counselor. I know that it can be expensive, so if you have insurance though, use it. If you don't have insurance, look up multiple ways, because there are some less expensive psychologists or counselors. And don't just think you have to go to the very best of the best, or you're not going to get, good treatment. I do think it's important to find someone you have a chemistry with and that you vibe with and you kind of think on a similar wavelength, and someone who's willing to push you a little bit, because you can get into a cycle of going to counselors or therapists who just listen to you speak, and that's really not going to help. That was a big reason for why I'm doing what I'm doing, because I hate that aspect of life that people are too scared to tell someone something because, I don't want to affect someone's life. It's like, I hate that. So definitely get help if you can. Number two, start thinking about what your needs and boundaries are, just within yourself. Before you get into relationships and connections, just think about for yourself, like, what are my needs? What are my boundaries? What are things that are important to me? What are things that help me feel safe? Write that down. And then if you're in a relationship or, within you, friendships and whatnot, start expressing those needs and boundaries. Using a lot of I statements. I would feel better if we could maybe communicate in this way, or propose things to help a situation if you need to. Then, becoming aware of our thoughts, feelings, triggers, actions, like I kind of spoke about. Starting to recognize the pattern you're getting into. If you start getting angry and saying mean things, or if you get really defensive, or you get you raise your tone of voice, or whatever happens, right? You get passive aggressive. Like, it could show up in many ways. So start recognizing those things about yourself and writing them down or keeping them stored in your brain if you can. Learning to pause. This is the biggest one, in my opinion. So once you learn all those things, now you have to start getting to a place of not only recognizing when it's happening, but saying, okay, this is happening and I need to stop for a second. And do whatever you need to do to, get out of that situation. Just say, hey, I can feel myself like getting worked up, and I'm not going to have a conversation in the way that I want to. I want to revisit this. I want to talk about this again, but I just need some space. That is a huge part of emotional maturity and navigating connections and relationships. Then let's talk about behavioral growth. At the beginning, I spoke about the fact that we're all humans and we make mistakes. You have to get to a place of understanding growth and what happens in growth, and realizing that you make a mistake, you learn, and you do better. So when you do make mistakes, start sitting down and checking yourself and being like, hey, I recognize I made this mistake. How can I learn from it and move forward now? And have the maturity to understand that that is a part of growth. Then, kind of the last thing here is being present and acting from integrity. So recognizing like the situations that you're in, recognizing what would be the best step forward, and talking to yourself and reminding yourself that you're on a journey now towards making the choice that feels best to you, that you know is the right choice to make, not the easy choice, the right choice to make. Because acting from a place of integrity is going to keep that going. Like once you start acting from a place of integrity, you're going to consistently want to act from that place, because you'll kind of get past the fear of wanting to please other people if you are consistently saying, no, I need to do what's right in this moment. So that's a big part as well. That can be helpful. So guys, we spoke about recognizing emotional immaturity within ourselves, how we can go about being aware and ultimately breaking those cycles and getting to a place of being more emotionally immature. So I hope you like this video. I hope you like this episode. If you did, definitely just leave a like. It really helps me. And subscribe. There's a little icon right there for people on computers, or just hit the subscribe button below. Super helpful for me right now. So I would really appreciate that. And everything else will be linked in the description below. Next week's episode, we're going to be talking about the dynamics now between becoming more emotionally mature and a relationship with someone who maybe also wants to become more emotionally mature, or with someone who has no real desire to work on their emotional maturity, and how we kind of navigate those relationships and keep ourselves safe. So thank you for being here, guys. If you got to the end of this video, I will see you next week. Emotional maturity part 3. Bye.